Hello, this is Dr. Neil Friedman. I am a medical oncologist trained in the United States of America and practicing in Netanya, Israel at Lanyado Hospital. I want to spend the next 15 to 20 minutes debunking false claims regarding the mRNA vaccines against the COVID-19 virus. Since the elections in the United States, I have been following the analysis of the outcome and listening to numerous videos of thought leaders about what actually transpired. Part of this discussion has also centered on the role that the COVID-19 epidemic has played on the outcomes of the election. And these same thought leaders are espousing ideas about the virus and the vaccine itself, which I believe are false. And I would like to address those claims in this video. So the various claims that I have heard are as follows. First of all, that the swab for the COVID-19 PCR test actually can cause the virus, that the mRNA vaccine injects you with nanoparticles that allow you to be tracked by the government, that the vaccine has actually killed more patients than it has prevented from dying from the virus itself, and that you can't find out what's really in the mRNA vaccines. Really? So first of all, can swabs used to test for the virus infect you? Well, the swabs that are used to obtain samples from the nasal pharynx are just regular swabs. The tips are either of a polyester material or cotton tipped. They contain no other particles such as nanoparticles or virus particles. They are by definition inert items. And as such, how could they possibly infect anyone? This is not true, and it just doesn't make sense. So what is the COVID-19 virus? Well, it is an RNA virus that contains approximately the genetic material for 26 different genes. When these genes are decoded by human cells, protein synthesizing abilities, it enables the virus to replicate itself, and in so doing, it overwhelms and kills the host cell, which is what causes the various symptoms such as pneumonia from the COVID-19 infection. These viral particles then go on to spread to other cells, and especially from the lungs, it enables the virus to be transmitted in respiratory droplets to other individuals. It is therefore very contagious. So what is an mRNA vaccine? Here is a short video produced by the public broadcasting system describing exactly what the mRNA viruses are. So there should be no doubt about that.
Science. These vaccines use messenger RNA, or mRNA, to deliver immunity. mRNA are short strands of instructions used to build proteins. It's impossible for these mRNA vaccines to alter our DNA in any way. Although that technology has been in development for decades, mRNA vaccines hadn't made it to market, until now. There are a few ways to make a vaccine. Most use a version of the pathogen they are trying to protect you against, like the flu or measles, to trigger an immune response. You can think of vaccines like a biological wanted poster. They show our bodies how to recognize the enemy, an antigen such as a harmful virus or bacteria, so we know how to react if it ever shows up. Our bodies will be prepared to send T cells to attack infected cells, and B cells to produce antibodies, which neutralize the virus and prevent it from invading healthy cells. mRNA vaccines use innovative technology to deliver protection. If traditional vaccines deliver wanted posters, these vaccines carry USB drives with instructions that tell our cellular machinery how to print its own poster. In other words, they instruct the body to make its own antigens. In the case of the coronavirus, the antigen is the infamous spike protein that attaches to and infects your cells. These vaccines use mRNA, a molecule that our cells need to create any type of protein to introduce us to that spike. To start, researchers isolated the part of the coronavirus's genetic sequence that codes for the spike protein. Then, they put an mRNA molecule containing the code into a super tiny drug delivery system known as a lipid nanoparticle, which can enter our cells. Inside the cell, ribosomes use the code to create a protein chain that resembles the enemy, the coronavirus's spike protein. Those cells can then temporarily display a lookalike of that protein, which prompts our immune cells to respond as if it were an antigen from a traditional vaccine.
So there you have it, a very nice description of what the mRNA vaccines are. So, can mRNA vaccines cause COVID-19? Well, the video basically explained that they can't for the following reasons. Note that mRNA vaccines contain no DNA. And additionally, the vaccine only contains one gene sequence to produce only the spike protein. Thus, they do not contain enough genetic information to cause infection because there is not enough genetic information to enable reproduction of the full COVID-19 virus. The nanoparticles coating the mRNA, again, as were depicted in the video, are nanolipids and have nothing to do with any other type of nanoparticles such as nanochips. Now, what about the claim that it's impossible to find any description of what's actually contained in the mRNA vaccines? Well, if you just do a search on the internet, you can find descriptions of the package inserts of both the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines. In the Moderna vaccine, you can see that it contains only messenger mRNA, which is encapsulated in a lipid nanostructure. Here it says lipid SM102. There are also some other excipients like cholesterol, acetic acid, sucrose, and some other chemicals which allow for stabilization of the mRNA. What about the Moderna vaccine efficacy? Do more people who get the vaccine die than people who got the placebo? If it's really true that the vaccine is killing people, then the opposite should be the case. But here we can see that in the group of patients, which was over 14,000 that received the vaccine, there were only 11 cases of infection compared to 185 in the 14,000 patients who received the placebo. This translates to a 94% protection against infection after receiving the vaccine. This is a graph of the cumulative infection rate in the patients who participated in the Moderna vaccine that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine on February 4th, 2021. You can see on the bottom, the blue line is the rate of infection of the patients who received the vaccine compared to those who received the placebo. It is quite striking. At the bottom, you can see numerically that patients who, after having received the second dose, there were only 12 cases of infection compared to 204 in the patients who received the placebo. So it is a very effective vaccine. Again, in terms of being able to find what is contained in the Pfizer vaccine, this is also readily available on the internet from the package insert. Each dose of the vaccine from Pfizer contains 30 micrograms of the mRNA encoding the viral spike protein. It also contains the lipids, polyethylene glycol, potassium chloride, monobasic potassium phosphate, and sodium chloride, which are all buffers, and there are no preservatives. So again, I don't see anything harmful in the vaccine itself. What about the efficacy of the Pfizer vaccine? Again, this had a little bit of a larger um, uh, population of participants. Of the 18,000 patients who received the vaccine, there were only 8 cases of infection compared to 162 in the placebo group. This is counting from 7 days after the second dose. This again translates to a 95% protection rate. And again, the article that was presented in the New England Journal of Medicine on December 31st, 2021 shows this very well. In the red, the patients who received the placebo, an almost negligible infection rate. Again, 9 cases versus 172. The patients who received the placebo, there were as a consistent continuous rise of infections. And the claim, I should have put this in the beginning, that was made that COVID-19 is nothing more than the common cold, or even if it's a little worse than that, it's nothing more than the flu virus. Well, just look at what's going on in Brazil during the first wave, or actually, this is probably the second wave. There were about 1,000 deaths per day. And now, just in the last week or so, the death rate has been over 4,000 a day. So this does not sound like the common cold or even the flu virus. And I don't think the patients' families who their loved ones have died from COVID-19 infection would appreciate you saying that they died from the flu or the cold. Even in the United States, the death rate at one point was up to 4,000. Fortunately, that is starting to decline. And also overall, this was as of November 5th, 2020. In the United States, there were close to 250,000 deaths. We know now that that's well over 300,000. In India, over 125,000. In Brazil, 161,000. Now that's well over 200,000. In Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, almost 100,000. So this is not the cold or the flu. Now, one of the most telling statistics about the efficacy of the mRNA vaccines is the follow graph, which shows the uptake of patients who have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. In Israel, where I live, the rate is over 60%, and over 50% of patients who have received both doses of the vaccine. In England, it's approaching 50%. In the United States, it's over 30%. And I believe that would explain why we began seeing a decrease in the infection rate in the United States and also in Israel. Just to I think the best demonstration of the efficacy of the vaccination program can be shown in Israel, just as I pointed out, because over 50 or 60% of the population has been vaccinated. And if you add to that another 800,000 patients who have been infected and are recovered, we're close to 70% of the population who currently has immunity against the virus. And here you see the active cases, which this was the second wave in the fall, and the third wave now, which peaked in the early January. But again, that was when the rollout of the vaccine program began. And ever since then, the rate of infection has declined dramatically. We're almost down to double digits and single digits, and especially in terms of the death rate, at the peak of the infection in late December, early January, there were upwards of 75 to 100 patients dying per day, and now there are very few, one or two or three a day. And if it's really true that the vaccine is causing deaths, then we should be seeing a continuous rise in the number of active cases. And but instead, we're seeing a decline in the number of cases and a decline in the death rate. So I think that um, uh, more than adequately debunks the claim that the vaccine itself is causing infections and deaths. So in conclusion, the COVID-19 is a serious and potentially lethal disease. It is not just a cold or even the seasonal flu. Unchecked, it can overwhelm even the best medical systems in the world. The two approved mRNA vaccines are extremely effective at stopping transmission of the virus, thereby saving thousands of lives worldwide. Now, every drug has side effects, and there will be anecdotal reports of adverse events from the vaccine. But on a global level, the benefits of mass vaccination far outweigh the risks. So I hope this has clarified some of the misinformation that is being spread by individuals who have a shallow understanding of the science and statistical methods. And I hope this shed some light on the truth and the benefit of the vaccine program. And hopefully, as more and more people throughout the world do get vaccinated, we can put an end to the COVID-19 pandemic and get it behind us so we can move on with our normal lives. Thank you.